I'm gonna be straight with you. Well, not completely straight, but I'm gonna be real with you. I am not feeling like my best self right now, which ironically coincides with a lot of the things that I want to talk about today. But before we get into that, like, I really just want all of us here in this perceived space to take a second and like truly check in with ourselves. Because something that I'm realizing lately is that I'm not only super good at like convincing other people that I'm cool and groovy and doing just fine, I'm also really good at convincing myself that I'm cool and groovy and everything's going just fine. And sometimes that's true, which is great, but sometimes I think it's not. And because I get a little like caught up in the performance of life, I forget to check in with myself. Or I do check in with myself, like my feelings will like surface because they are not hiding for anybody. I don't care how slick you think you are, but I'll check in with myself very briefly. But then when I know that the feeling might cause some sort of stir, whether it's within myself or with me and another person or a situation or whatever, I'm kind of just like, shh, 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 shh. Go sit down. Go sit down. And so eventually, like, they still come back. And then I'm in a place of like finally acknowledging where I'm not doing so great. And then it's kind of like, okay, I've acknowledged it. It's rearing its ugly head. What do I do now? So that's kind of where I'm at. And last week, that was kind of what prompted me to allow myself to take a little break and not put myself on the spot like this. And to say that I'm feeling like a whole lot better from that point is mostly a lie. But I do feel more sure of what I'm feeling. And so while I'm not doing great, I feel like I'm in a place where I can push myself to have a conversation about it and to, you know, be open about how I'm feeling, because number one, it's a sort of release for me. And I know that in the end, like, it will make me feel better. Like going to the gym, like for those of you that, you know, go to the gym or like work out. Sometimes you don't want to, and then you like do it anyway, because there's that little part of your brain that's like, come on, do it. So you do it anyway, and then you feel so much better afterwards. That's kind of where I'm at, I think, where I think that this will offer me some sort of like release in the moment. And like one of the biggest things that helps me get through periods of struggle is community and connection to other people. I think when I'm at my absolute worst, like literally absolute worst, the simple knowledge of the fact that like other people are going through things that are similar, or that other people at a point in time or another have felt the way that I am feeling, is sometimes literally what gets me through. To not feel like I'm an alien or crazy, or, you know, that I am the only person that has ever experienced this and that I will thus not make it out alive. So I think I'm kind of here in an attempt to maybe bring that to other people too, because it's hard. And, you know, I'm a very self-aware person, and to a fault almost. Like, it's pretty annoying sometimes how aware I am of like what I'm going through. And it's really frustrating when you are aware of what you're going through and aware of what you're feeling, but you're also smart enough to know that like this is not how it should be. But how do I get out of it? How do I handle this? How do I process it? How do I feel genuine resolve inside? And, you know, I think today in the world, in society, social media, wherever, self-awareness is really praised and really sought after. And I think that that's super cool, because a lot of people walk through life very not aware of themselves and how, you know, the things that they do or say impact other people, or how life is impacting them, or whatever the case might be. But at the same time, like, I think the conversation lacks the part where we chat about like how fucking hard it is to be self-aware, how ugly it can be, how isolating it is, how painful, uncomfortable, whatever you want to call it, it can be. And yet how you know innately, like deep in your bones, that it's completely necessary. And that at the end of the day, while other people might be there to support you, it's something that you need to do for yourself. When you're on a journey of like healing and growth and really seeking to like undo a lot of things in your life while also like bringing in a lot of things in your life, all for like your best interest, it's really hard when other people are not receptive to that. Or when it's all just about like healing is doing yoga, and like healing is going and sitting by the ocean, and healing is telling off your toxic ex. And you know what? Sometimes it is. But I think that, like a lot of other things that I'd like to get into today, healing has been masqueraded, as most things are on social media. Healing sometimes is sitting by the ocean. Healing is sometimes, you know, going for a walk or treating yourself to something or whatever. But it's also super fucking hideous. And it's super fucking hard. And it makes you question everything. Like every bit of your reality is like flipped on its head. It's really capable of making you feel like you're insane. And as you move further through healing and, you know, growing, and you feel like you're reaching new stepping stones of like who you are and like versions of yourself, a lot of people don't really talk about or call enough attention to how much grieving and letting go it involves, whether that's mindsets, people, places, situations, and whatever. And it's all just very confusing. Because when you have to let go of things that you've known your whole life, like beliefs or thoughts or feelings or people, you question, like, that's all I've ever known. You're reconstructing reality and normalcy for yourself, and sometimes it's not really received that well by people around you. And that's really telling too, you know, like the more that you feel challenged internally, the more that you might become comfortable and willing to challenge the things around you. And that's not always received well by people who have not looked inward in that way. It's taken very personally. It's reacted to very negatively. And so you're on the other side of things, right? Number one, that makes you question whether like you're the asshole and like whether you are doing the right thing, or am I crazy for feeling this way? And number two, like, you know deep down that you have to push through that, and that maybe that means if this is the energy that you're being met with as you're walking this path, that like that person can't continue to walk with you. And that's fucking hard. Like, there's really no other way to put it. And so I guess this is all really just to say that like healing has a lot of bows wrapped around it. And I love the pretty parts of healing. I love the becoming in touch with like things that I love. And I love the journaling and the listening to podcasts and the walking on the beach and going on adventures. But those cannot exist in true, healing form if the shadowy parts don't exist too, and I try to look at all of this from like a non-religious and like a non-spiritual perspective, because like I was raised Catholic, and that was rather traumatizing. So I've definitely like worked in my adulthood and like late teenagehood in realizing that like that wasn't for me, and that it was rather damaging to me. I've worked towards undoing a lot of that, but then I think that in undoing that, like in an effort to feel whole still and not really like feel whole with myself just yet, I clung on to this whole like spirituality thing. And I think that there's a lot of beautiful parts of that too, but I also realized that like as beautiful as a crystal might be, and I have many of them, as pretty as it might be, it's not going to fix me. It's not going to save me. Doing like work on my chakras is not like the end all be all either. I think, and this is not to shit on like one or the other, whether it's like religion or spirituality, because like do whatever you want. But for me, it was just another thing for me to cling on to. Another thing to like, well, I'm feeling this way because, my throat chakra is just blocked. Like, no! You're feeling that way because you're being emotionally manipulated and you don't have the courage to speak up for yourself. And it's like, do spiritual beliefs play into those things? Yes, but like, for me, I think it was just like another Band-Aid to not acknowledge like the types of acknowledgements that would really allow me to do the work and to grow. I kind of just had to leave it all by the wayside. Like, take it for what it is. Don't let it rule your life. I was very used to belief systems ruling my life, is really what I'm getting at. Because I feel like I'm fumbling over my words. I was used to belief systems really ruling my life. And being the answer. I sought that for the answer, always. So when I became older and I got into like learning about spirituality, I think that I clung to that and allowed that to rule my life in a way too. And I looked to that for all of the answers, when in actuality, who I needed to be looking at for all of the answers was myself. Which is insane, because we feel like we often don't have any of the answers, but I am a true believer that we do have all the answers that we'll ever need. It's just a matter of like decluttering the rest of the fucking shit that's piled on top of us and finding them. And they'll come to us when we're ready. It's not like, we're Pandora's boxing ourselves. And so when you come to those realizations on your own, like you have to sit with yourself. And if people can't honor that, maybe they don't belong sitting in the same space as you, and that's hard to sit with, and that really goes for much more than other people, like jobs and belief systems and places and whatever. It's really interesting to me because I think the world is consumed by consuming. And one of the things that we are plagued with consumption of is like social media and content. And I've actually found that in my larger consumptions of content, because social media is often branded as like this place where we find community and awareness and conversation and like-mindedness, and in a lot of ways it does provide us that. So like, I'm not discounting the fact that like social media has afforded us an unprecedented level of connection. But I also think that it's ironic, because I've sought to, when you're feeling like alone and isolated in your own journeys of like growth and moving through certain things and whatever, we always seek something because we're uncomfy. And so I feel like in my large consumptions of social media, you know, sometimes I do really resonate with the things that I consume, and it's really validating to know that other people experience certain things in a similar light as myself. But at the same time, it's also very like jarring. And I think it's actually had like the opposite, very negative effect on me, where I'm coming to any sort of realization about what's going on with myself. And then maybe I go on social media and I see someone like post a video about something that they're going through, and they label it as something that I felt that I was going through, but they're just very different. And it's like, I think it just feeds the monster of like invalidating yourself and really questioning whether or not what you're feeling or what you're, you know, going through or what you're diagnosed with is valid. And what I mean by that, like, I've had this conversation with a couple of my friends in the last few years. And I more recently have seen other people engage in this conversation, which was really refreshing for me to witness, is that like, one of the ugliest things for me in my life so far was realizing that like, my brain, like the state of my brain, is not just normal and something that I was born with and that's just who I am and these are my weird quirks. Like, no. It's mental illness, babe. And that manifested as a result of, you know, X, Y, and Z types of trauma. And I never realized this because the things that I've experienced in my head are so embarrassing. And so, like, I'm so ashamed of them. And humiliated that, like, literally no one on the planet outside of myself knows some of the thoughts that have gone through my head. Because I would never, ever, ever risk the possibility of sharing them with other people and then having them think that I was awful and unworthy and disgusting and whatever. And so it's really damaging when you're in the fucking thick of that, right? And then you go on TikTok and you see some girl or some person, let me not be stereotypical here, say, I let my intrusive thoughts win because like I got a haircut, or like I let my intrusive thoughts win because I ate a second piece of chocolate. It warped my reality so bad to be at such an impressionable point in my mental health and acknowledging my own mental health, to see that type of shit when I was just getting a grasp of like what intrusive thoughts were for myself and like how atrocious they were, that for a minute, that made me like, oh, so that's what an intrusive thought is. And then whatever I'm dealing with is really just like, I'm a fucking sociopath. That's what an intrusive thought is. When you want to impulsively go buy like a new comforter set from Marshall's. That's what that is. And you win. You know, you let the intrusive thoughts win because you like shaved your head. Like, I must be absolutely heinous because my intrusive thoughts are no reflection of that. They are a lot more graphic. They are a lot more violent. They consist of a lot of violence towards myself, a lot of violence towards other people that I love and adore and care about, and even strangers that I love and would never ever hurt. They are very predatory at times. And I just like felt my body get physically warmer because I'm like so not in my element speaking about this stuff. And so it's really, on one hand, community and connection and solidarity and validity can be shared on social media. And then you have these people that have made like buzzwords out of it. Like, I'm autistic because X, Y, or Z, or I have intrusive thoughts because I like do X, Y, or Z. It's really damaging and invalidating to people who are really good people. Who literally question their lives because the things that they like think in their head really convince them that they're not good people, that they're really bad people, or that, they need to do this, and this because otherwise they're not a good person, or otherwise they won't be loved, or this person will get hurt that they care. Like, it's endless, the conversation, really, which is another reason why like I think it's quite insane that topics such as mental illness and neurodivergence have been cut into like such bite-sized pieces, because the conversation surrounding them really is endless. And no two people, experience mental illness in the same way, but like most often it's always equally as gruesome and ugly. So I don't know, this is just like a lot of the stuff that's been going on in my head, and like I said, like recent conversations that I've had with people that are super validating and super refreshing, like I said before, because I always felt like I was just being like a negative Nelly or like a Debbie Downer when I would get pissed off that like people would be so flippant and so freely throw around certain like buzzwords when it came to mental health and trauma and neurodivergence and all of those collection of things. I really thought that I was just like being a stickler, but it's almost refreshing to know that like other people are pretty frustrated too, that like the true solace is found in small one-to-one conversations and small, having the strength to put yourself out there, and then somebody messages you and says, hey, I thought I was the only one. And I feel the slightest bit better that I'm not the only one. Because a lot of the times you're in a space where like people in your own personal life don't even understand you. And they're looking at you like you're fucking nuts, and they can't adequately support you. I know that that's not the case for everyone, and I'm really happy that that's not the case for everyone, but oftentimes it is, especially when you talk about like the less desirable parts of mental illness, because it's really easy to talk about like not easy, but it's easier sometimes to talk about, like, well, I have anxiety, or like, I, struggle with depression, but nobody wants to talk about the people that, struggle with intrusive thoughts about, like, bestiality or pedophilia. And here I go again, crawling back into my shell because I say the things out loud and it makes me like, holy fuck. Because I've only ever had these conversations like one-on-one. And even that was a lot. That person that I had the conversation with was going through the exact same thing as me. And I still felt like, you're exposing yourself to them and they're going to think you're fucking crazy or like you're disgusting. So this is huge. And I'm trying to push myself into an uncomfortable place because, number one, I think it's like for the greater good. To destigmatize like the less desirable conversations surrounding mental illness. And number two, like, I'm looking for a bit of that community myself. To be completely honest. Because I think, like I said before, that's the only way that we get through. Just check in with yourself. I'm fumbling the ball, to be completely honest, and so I'm going to keep this short. And there's probably like so much more that I could say and so much more that I'm missing. But I wanted to do the bare minimum, which was show up, and I did that. So I guess that's all I can ask for. And just know that, like, if you feel isolated and you know that you're doing this on your own and that parts of it you need to do on your own, you don't have to do all of it on your own. And that there are people around you, whether they are like an unlikely bystander in your close circle or like a complete stranger. There are people there. And there's me. I am also here. And when I tell you, would never, ever, ever, ever hold judgment or distaste or look down upon the things that you might be struggling with, I promise. Because having that afforded to me was pretty much like what has saved my life a time or two. So I very effortlessly can give that back to people in the world. So just make sure you know that. You're on this journey for yourself and maybe by yourself, but you don't always have to do it alone. And there are other people in the world that know like just how fucking hard and how ugly it can be. And that we commend you. Yeah. So be good to yourself. Start as slow as you need to and work your way up. Lord knows I am. And I sure as fuck haven't gotten the performance thing down because, well, here I am. A hot mess and all. I love you. And I'll see you next Tuesday.